It's so hard to be part of a culture that hasn't taught you these things.
My name is Gabrielle Safir. I am an artist, a storyteller, a multi-passionate creator, and a seeker. I currently live here in the remote West, close to nature. I'm following a somewhat unconventional path to seek freedom, growth, learning, and a deeper connection with myself and the world. A few weeks ago, I did a project and made a video documenting my process of building a little dream garden where I used only salvaged scrap and reused materials that I found on the property that I live on. Towards the beginning of that video, there's a short scene where I share that I felt called to do a little ceremony to honor and connect to the land. And while I edited that scene to be less than a minute total in that video, the reality was that I actually had over an hour of footage. And the truth of my experience of connecting with the land was much, much more.
And just kind of the amusing irony is that after I put out the build video, you'd think like, oh, that was the point. Like that was the thing. But now in retrospect, I see that these moments that I'm about to share with you, this was the true heart of why I did this project in the first place. And yeah, when I was editing it, it was so clear that this was its own thing, and it didn't fit inside the already 40-minute video of the build. And but I couldn't stop thinking about the footage because when I watched it, I was like, wow, this is what we go through, those of us that are modern humans, but who seek a deep connection and relationship with the earth, with nature, with the elements, with ourselves, and who have suffered the loss and or who don't have a lineage or a cultural connection to teach us, which honestly I think is most people in the modern Western world. So I've noticed that there is this huge gap. There's a lot of examples of modern people seeking reconnection through the ways of the past. For many of us, that's not the way. That for many of us, it's actually about understanding that we as modern people need to create rituals, traditions, practices that meet modern realities and meet our inhabited physical space, and not a way that relies on concept and relies on a consciousness and a way of being that is not congruent or even alive in modern times. And additionally, what's not addressed is this very fundamental aspect of we are a people living in diaspora and in disconnection, whether that's we are displaced from our original lands or the lineage of wisdom from which we would connect to has been broken. There's very, very few unbroken lineages of wisdom that still remain in the world today. And so all of this has informed this project that I've been working on for a long time, which is called Earthology. And kind of the main thing is this understanding that all traditions of the past were just somebody's idea at one point, and we have every right to create the consciousness, the wisdom, the lineage, the traditions, the culture, the practices as they did, and that we also have access to the power, to the wisdom, to the connection, to the intuitive knowing, to that intelligence that it's so easy to identify with the past. We have access to all of that to create a culture and a way of living now that meets us now, that's not just conceptual. So when I was watching this video, it was it was really humbling, but it was also really powerful to have an example of like where we're all at if we're on this path and we're on this journey, which is not knowing, openness, curiosity, and discovery, of learning to trust our own intuitive knowing, because I really believe that that's where this information comes from. Might not be universally true, but that's not the point of this. It's true for us, and it creates that living relationship that then will evolve. And it's interesting because I have a lot of rituals and practices that I've already established for like other aspects of this way of relating and culture building and connection. And, but because I've been traveling for so many years, I hadn't had the experience of building a garden, building a relationship with a natural space that you're going to be living with and beside is so vastly different. I would say within the last few years, like this work and this way of being has really anchored in a completely different way. And while I've had gardens in the past, this was completely different. This was just kind of this initial moment that I now can see was the foundation, because as I have now planted in the garden and been tending to the garden, this relationship has just opened, revealed, continued to grow in level of connection and understanding, in I don't even know, but also, in depth. And so I hope if you're on this journey that you see a part of yourself in this, and that it's not about going in and knowing how to do it, and that there's actually really no right way or wrong way to do it. We have to discover it, and we have to trust that in that relationship and in our constant surrendering to the mystery of, we don't know, show me, that this is what it looks like, that this is what it can look like, that we don't have to have a lineage or an established system to be valid and to rely on, that you are valid in creating your own. And so I just knew that this story needed to be shared. Good morning. It snowed last night, but it's warm enough that you can smell the earth. Strong smell of petrichor. It's so wonderful. And I was just inside. I was gonna do my like meditation practices and kind of do some inward journeying, but I kept my intuition was like, no, you gotta go get outside. So here I am. So yesterday morning I woke up and it just hit me that I have no idea what I'm doing. Oh, it's a potato bug. It's a roly-poly. Oh, they're so cool. Oh, like for a species to just continue to exist in the way that they did, like back when the dinosaurs were alive, like the intelligence. Ah, the brilliant, it's like we look at the redwoods, right? And we're like, oh, the redwoods. But this little guy's been around since the dinosaurs. Oh, you're so magic and you're so cute. Oh, look at you go. Okay. So the other part that I want to talk about is something that has to do with the land itself. And I'm very emotional about it. I've been processing this for like 2 days. Basically, when I was pulling the weeds, I noticed that there were kind of a lot of holes in the ground, which is really not that uncommon. We have so many little burrowing creatures like moles and voles that, if you just like kind of go right over there, there's like, they're all over our yard. But this in particular, I'm starting to suspect, because it's like potting soil and it's so light and it's so fluffy, I think it kind of became a hub of activity. Like, so far, I haven't seen anything that would indicate that this was like a home base. I don't really know. I'm not going to say that I know to try to make myself feel better. The truth is I feel very emotional and very overwhelmed and very conflicted. And I was talking to my mom about it, and she reminded me, she said, Gabrielle, this is a really powerful opportunity for you for a bunch of different things. Because, you know, the point of respecting nature isn't necessarily to never interact with nature. The problem begins when we don't do so consciously. And there's so many different layers and levels to that. Me interacting with this land and building this garden isn't just impacting me, it's impacting the wildlife that I live with and beside. It just, and with what my mom said, like, it all just kind of really became very clear. Like, I knew something felt a little off even when I was pulling the weeds. To a lot of modern people, you know, we do stuff like that. We don't even think about it. But I was like, I need to ask permission. Like, when you really tap into just like how much we are affecting all of the living things and creatures that we live with and beside it, it gets really overwhelming. But that doesn't mean that we do nothing. And I think, you know, there are ways to cultivate a relationship where we interact with it in a conscious way. You know, I think some people would argue that that's only really to make ourselves feel better, and I can hear like my own inner critic say that to myself, and I think that that's why I'm struggling. But at the same time, I also know, like, on a deep knowing spirit level, like spirit to spirit, land to my spirit level, that makes a big difference, and it does matter. And it's not just about making myself feel better, that there really might be an aspect of this that it's so much more than I can really comprehend, and I don't really need to make sense of it. So what I've decided I'm going to do is a little ceremony to connect with the land, to ask permission to have a conscious interaction with the land and see what happens. And to just set an intention and a prayer and like send some kind of communication to the bugs and the animals of like, hey, I would really like to have a garden here. It means disturbing the soil and changing this. And also maybe, asking for blessing, asking for permission. Oh, there's so much fear in my system. Oh, like, I'm so afraid to say something wrong, or I'm so afraid to say something and be attacked for it. I'm so afraid to just, you know, to speak about these things where I feel like I have absolutely no authority, that I feel like I am just, it's so hard to be part of a culture that hasn't taught you these things. And I just want to honor the earth, and I want to honor the land, and I want to honor the animals that I live beside and with. You know, like, they have every right to be here just as much as I do. And I know that there are so many others. If you're watching this, I know you're probably really sensitive like me, and this matters. So come with me, as I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to try to honor and respect and do it with reverence and do it with my heart, and not just go in with an idea thinking that because I'm the human, I have the right, and use this as an opportunity to connect deeper and to learn. You know, I don't even know what a land and earth creature honoring ceremony looks like. I'm just gonna be led by my gut and my heart and my spirit. And I run the risk of looking really, really stupid, and I don't know, but it's the best that we can do. It's the best I can do. Just admitting how afraid I am just like dropped me right in. We don't have to show up acting like we know anything. Just say where you're at, man. experience was really profound. Wow. It's hard not to like completely lose it talking about it. That was so beautiful. That was so profound. There were so many different layers to it. When that meadowlark started singing, oh my god. It just felt like an acknowledgement from something. Wow. It was really interesting. There was a lot of different layers to it. First, I felt immense grief, like overwhelming, profound, powerful grief. Like a combination of grief from the land, having not been acknowledged for so long, and then my own grief of like the loss of that lineage connection and that connection with land, that kind of relationship, that kind of conversation. And then, yeah, just like a lot of maybe kind of collective grief about just being disconnected from the earth. And then that just opened up and unfolded to just this like chest and heart bursting gratitude and reverence and awe of like the incredibleness, the majesty, the power of nature, and just how incredible it is, and how it's always there for us when we open ourselves to it, and it asks almost nothing of us. It gives, it creates all condition for our life. It just, I don't even know how to put this to words. I might seem like really, really crazy right now. It's okay. They say that the journey to becoming a mystic and to becoming whole again is filled with madness and non-linear things that don't make any sense. It's like, okay, I'm signed up for that. That's what's happening. And then there was just this communion that I couldn't put into, I wouldn't be able to put into words, of just so much instantaneous, of so much connection. And there was, I don't know how to put that into words, what happened after that, of just, it's like, I didn't have to, it wasn't anything very deliberate. It was like, what my intention was sensed and was responded to, and I don't even know how to describe what that was like. But I felt this like upwelling of joy and enthusiasm and excitement that didn't feel like my own, of like, yo, a garden. Like, yeah. And yeah, my mind drew to the creatures and the critters that have lived here, and I just like let them know, like, okay, I'd like to build a garden here. Things are going to be changing. And I set the intention, and this was what was so powerful, is I found myself just intuitively knowing to set the intention of, like, if I'm ever taking a step that is out of integrity, that is not okay, tell me. Right? Like that, like how I was feeling in the beginning is a really perfect example of like a non-living, breathing relationship with something, right? A very conceptual thing of like, oh, this is wrong. I'm bad. I'm horrible for wanting to move this earth and disturb this and like all of this stuff. And then to get the communication back of like, we'll let you know. So I don't have to take on that responsibility, and I don't have to project that experience onto it. and suffer the whole time while I'm doing, and then, build up a whole story and feel guilty and like just feed all of that it can actually be like an experience of a lot of beauty and a lot of I don't have words for it. Oh, it's so beautiful out. Okay. That feels complete. I'm going to get started. So I've also made the decision that in hopes of causing the least amount of harm to any animals or creatures that might be in this area, I'm going to dig all of this soil by hand with a shovel. Originally, I have a friend with a backhoe that's coming to help me install one more post for the gate, and I was going to ask him to help me dig the soil. Oh, it feels so good. Oh, it's getting really hot. The amazing news is that as I've been digging, I've been kind of like looking through the soil first because it's so light and easy and fluffy to go to kind of sift through. And so far there's absolutely no signs of any sort of like little burrow. I have come across some tunnels, but there haven't been any burrows. I haven't found any area where they're like storing food. Realized that the very act of being in that process of digging the soil can be like an act of prayer, can be a practice of reverence and connection. There was like this intuitive feeling when I was praying that was like, this isn't their home. and I had so much fear about like saying that and like maybe it wasn't true. This is gonna be a lot of work, but it feels so good to be outside. So I'm having a lot of awareness come in as I'm doing this. And what it's doing for me is actually making me realize, like, this is why it's so important to fully understand your power and to take full responsibility for the power that you do have. And what I mean by that is cultivating skillful means. They say that in all creation there is destruction. It's just kind of a fact of life. Like, yeah, I could not do this and not make myself a garden, but then I can't create and I can't go through this process. Just like all of the carnivorous animals, if they don't eat another animal, they can't survive. But if you fully understand like the depth of your power and the depth of your impact, and I think that the responsibility is in not shying away from the many different layers and levels of the destruction that we can create on our path of creation or just by our actions. That we really need to be aware of those layers and levels, because not only then can we negate any unnecessary harm, but when you're, really fully aware of something, there's an aspect of really deep reverence and responsibility that comes up when you really are fully aware of it. This is why, modern humans becoming so disconnected from the processes of nature don't understand. You don't understand what it means, like when you dam a river. You don't understand the power of that and the many, many layers and levels of effects. And I think that it's like one thing to read it on a piece of paper and to be like, oh yeah, and then it displaces this and this and this and this. But when you are physically there, when you are physically in the soil, it's a very, very different experience. And it feels like that there is a very needed initiation of being in relationship with some sort of natural cycle of destruction to really understand your place in it. You know, the point is not to avoid it, but to own our power in our role. But I think it is in the way that we have become so unconscious to the processes that are necessary for life, for creation, for our existence, that are inherently very destructive, that we've become so disconnected with them that we've also completely lost our relationship to our responsibility and our reverence for symbiotic relationship, for the different layers and levels of things that are affected. You know, it's like I'm just moving dirt, but I'm affecting a whole little ecosystem that's here. And, you know, peoples who lived in deep relationship with Earth didn't shy away from building things and creating things, but there was a discernment, there was a sense of honor, there was a sense of reverence, there was a very different level of consciousness in relationship to it. And I think that relationship and that awareness and that responsibility made the biggest difference in the world. Let this represent that you can create it yourself. You can turn towards yourself. You can turn towards any nature that is around you and receive the knowing and the direction and the orientation that you need to access that power. So I hope this meets you and validates wherever you're at on your journey. There are so many moments and aspects of this that I can see myself sitting down like I am right now and unpacking and going into much, much more detail and sharing and whatnot. It didn't feel appropriate for this video, but if you are interested in these kinds of topics and this kind of work, I'll be starting a Patreon and or a Substack where I will be diving into these kinds of things with much more depth and sharing and discussion about this approach and this type of work. And from the perspective of I'm a fellow traveler on this journey. But yeah, it can be kind of hard to release something like this because I want to provide so much more context, but it just actually felt like for this video, just leaving it as it is was good enough, and that can dive into a much greater depth in other ways. So if you're interested, I'll leave the links below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.